Hi, this is Bobby Nash. I'm one of the contributors to the Devil's Due anthology, and today I'm going to read the opening couple of pages from my story in the anthology called Dante's 10th. The noon stage never arrived at noon. If it managed to arrive by 1 o'clock, it was still considered on time. Time meant so little in Dante, Arizona, that the local denizens of the dusty town were happy if it arrived at all. And then there were the days it didn't. Conventional knowledge that a new line of the Continental Rail Company's railroad was on track to pass by within a year meant that they would soon have more reliable transportation and a shiny new train depot on the edge of town. To that end, no one bothered to plan on the stage arriving on time anytime soon. A few years earlier, the notion of Dante being courted by the railroad was laughable at best, completely out of the question at worst. Dante was a speck on the map, a dried-up oasis in the desert badlands that was well on its way to being reclaimed by the very earth it was built upon. The town was on its way to disappearing as though it had never been. And then Casey Hudson went and discovered a huge gold strike on his property. It did not take long for word of his discovery to spread It did not take long after word of his discovery spread for the town to be besieged by prospectors seeking to find their fame and fortune, because they all believed that where there was one gold strike, there were more just waiting to be found. And then they discovered silver in the area as well. Opportunists, thieves, and scoundrels followed the money, bringing with them gambling dens, bars, and whorehouses that now littered Dante's downtown thoroughfare they called Main Street. Next came a hotel and a restaurant, and then the slaughterhouses, farms, and laundries that supported them. Later still came a newspaper and telegraph office, all built by those who preferred to make their way off the money others dug out of the ground. Then came the dreamers, those enamored of the Wild West who came looking for adventure and found themselves biting off more than they could chew, or being disappointed that the town of Dante was not a dime novel come to life. At least not on most days. Many would-be prospectors and farmers gave up after the first month, or tried to stick it out only to fall prey to Dante's harsh weather and venomous indigenous natives, the rattlesnake. The undertaker was never short of business, and soon the cemetery that had been cordoned off outside of the city on a hill where no one had laid claim to the land was filled to capacity, and a second location scouted for overflow. After the town minister abruptly ran off in the middle of the night, looting the church coffers before heading into parts unknown, Dante was out spiritual guidance until Reverend Elias Matthews arrived and took over the running of the church that sat on the outskirts of town. A short walk from the bars where Saturday night sinners could be forgiven for their debauchery on Sunday morning after they had sobered up. Father Elias, as the Reverend preferred to be called, was a kindly old man most of the time, but he too was prone to drink, and when he did, he could have a nasty temper if pushed wrong. Eventually, the Reverend started keeping to himself, sequestered in the church, and not venturing into town where temptation awaited him. Sightings of the man of the cloth outside of the church were rare and usually only on the occasion of a burial service. A few months into the gold rush, a doctor arrived in town and put out his shingle. Dr. Smoke was a frontier doctor, having learned the ways of medicine in the army while fighting the savages that lived out in the Badlands. The work was steady. Mine injuries were the worst, but Doc had his fill of removing bullets from those who were not as quick on the draw as others. An outbreak of cholera had caused a problem about a year earlier. There were a number of deaths contributed to the disease, but eventually Dr. Smoke was able to get a handle on the outbreak. He still worked in town, his office over the Last Chance Saloon. Rumor had it that a full-time United States federal marshal was being sent to bring law and order to Dante sometime in the near future. At the moment, the only marshalling done in Dante was when a marshal traveled from one of the other towns and passed through, which wasn't that often. Most folks in town preferred it that way. Law and order would only get in the way of their schemes. Dante was a boom town, even in spite of its name. Petitions had been made to the temporary provisional government of the territory, but they were government in name only, and the petition was never acted upon. Legend had it that the first settler in town described the town as hotter than Dante's ball sack when he arrived, a tale that was often repeated as more people came to town. The name stuck, but was eventually shortened to Dante and would later become Dante, Arizona once the territory gained statehood. Until statehood became a reality, Dante was just another gold mining boomtown that would no doubt dry up as soon as the mines were picked clean. That was still some time away. New finds happened with increasing frequency, turning uneducated bullies into rich tycoons overnight. Yes, sir, Dante was the place to make your fortune, provided you watched your back. There were many dangers in the Badlands. And that's the opening to Dante's 10th in the Devil's Due anthology. Again, my name is Bobby Nash. Thank you for listening to my poor reading skills. This is why I leave the audio to the professional narrators. But thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the book. Thank you.